Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the topic of our last episode, how to live stress-free without stress management. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now, let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Rob Krecak is a thrill seeker, self-professed nerd, question asker, voracious reader, competitor, keynote speaker, and business builder. When he got his first Wall Street job as a sell-side equity analyst out of college, he thought he'd made it. After buying everything he wanted on his wish list, he realized that he still wasn't happy. He listened to his deep down desire to help more people by leaving finance to eventually own 3 Anytime Fitness health clubs, 4 You Break I Fix cell phone repair stores, and a tech startup. As someone vulnerable to technology's addictive hold from a young age, video games and Facebook in particular, Rob is on a mission to help individuals and companies reduce stress and get back time to master their careers and lives. He founded Humans First to provide a one-of-a-kind consulting experience that analyzes people's efficiency and energy by paying attention to their technology mindfulness. Rob thinks there's always something to be learned from everyone, and he lets his curiosity guide conversations. In his spare time, he likes to do CrossFit, better himself through reading, travel, and spend time with his wife, Nikki. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Candy. Really grateful to be here and looking forward to chatting with you and the listeners.
I know this is going to be an interesting topic. I haven't had this discussion before, and I'm sure it's important for listeners to really pay attention to. Basically, before I get into the questions I have for you, I would love for you to tell me just a little bit more about yourself and how did you even get into helping people with this technology mindfulness?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that. So I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, home to some very supportive parents and a great family. And, really was grateful for everything that they've been able to help me do, include build my businesses. But, high school was a very difficult time for me because I had really, really bad acne. It was very crippling. And ultimately I had low self-esteem and self-worth. And I felt terrible about myself and how I looked. And so, one of the things that was an unfortunate side effect of having this acne was that I actually became addicted to video games. But this was in the mid 90s before, most people even had a cell phone or had an internet connected computer at home. And so I kind of say that I was addicted to technology before it was cool to be addicted to technology. But there was other points in my life where I also was addicted to Facebook and email. And so, I've seen personally how many different technologies can have negatively impacted my life. And the reason that I'm excited to share the information with people with my new company, Humans First, is because I don't want people to go through what I went through, and I want them to live better and happier lives.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important, that we discuss boundaries because we do have to use technology, right? But if you don't have self-control or if there are issues, that you have that ends up driving you to become addicted, then it becomes a problem. So that's why I thought it would be great to have this topic because a lot of people probably don't think about how much time they're really spending or if they really are, having the need to grab their phone first thing in the morning and check things, instead of, maybe taking care of some other things. So I know this is an important topic. And so I wanted to ask you first, what does technology mindfulness mean? And then how can we practice it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you touched on a bunch of interesting things that we could chat about, but the way I define technology mindfulness is it's having an awareness of the ways that you're using technology so that you can make your life easier or better instead of more difficult. And the reason that I named the company Humans First is in America, and this is a statistic from before COVID, so you can't say that COVID affected this or anything. In America, on average, we spend 12 hours and 21 minutes a day in front of screens and media. That's 3/4 of our waking lives. And so, unfortunately, humans aren't first in our world anymore. Technology is first. And so, my goal with Humans First is to educate people and give them some tools that they can use, the very practical tools to help them use technology better and maybe, put humans first again in our lives. And because that's how we get the most joy and meaning and happiness in our lives.
It's true. You've heard people say, I've heard it, I've seen it too, where, a family may be going out to dinner and you see everyone on their phones and they're not even having conversations with each other. And you're like, wait, you're supposed to be having family time, so that's just one example where we see that. So, I know, as you're saying, it's concerning about how we're using technology. And so I would love for you to touch a little bit more about that, of why it is concerning that we are using so much technology.
Yeah. So, the answer to that question is kind of complicated, and there's many answers to it, but I'll try to summarize, the 100 books and 2,000 articles and studies that I've read about this topic in a couple of sentences for you. So what I see is happening is the way and how much we use technology is increasing our stress on a day-to-day and sometimes minute-to-minute basis. But what it's also doing is it's degrading our ability to deal with stress because it's diminishing our relationships, communities, and friendships. And that is our social support system. And that's one of the main ways that we deal with or buffer against stress. And so you have technology increasing stress while at the same time decreasing our ability to deal with stress. And I truly believe that this is the root cause of not all, but a lot of the mental health crisis we have today. It really emanates from the way and how much we're using technology.
I agree with you on that too, because, we hear technology is supposed to make our lives easier, right? We're supposed to be able to do work faster, more efficiently, or, it's easy to be able to just send a text to someone. And if they don't have time to talk to you now, at least you sent your message and they can send back. But, I've seen myself even hiring employees at one point that the way that they're able to communicate is not as great as it used to be. Like, when we were in school and we had to know how to write letters and, talk on the phone and all of that. And it seems like a lot of people now, we're out of practice, right? We're not used to writing. We're not used to really having conversations. It's just, writing back and forth, small little words in text or something too, and not really having conversations. So I guess, what is one thing that people can do then if they're saying, yes, I realize that there's a problem. What can we do to get started on having real conversations with people again and interacting with people and building up the social outside of technology?
Yeah, so I have a statistic for you, and then I guess and a suggestion for the readers. So it's interesting you're talking about the different generations and how we use technology differently. And this is not a criticism, but it's an observation. Over 50% of Gen Z is afraid to make a phone call. Like they don't want to use the phone to make a voice call at all. Over half. And so, I'm a millennial, right? Like I'm almost 40 years old. And so I just think of phone calls very differently, and I'm not afraid to make a phone call, but that again, I think is a highly generational thing. But I can explain actually psychologically what's happening. And I think if people understand what's happening, then it might motivate them a little bit differently to, to communicate differently. So let's say, for instance, Candy, you and I were in a room together and we were just chatting, right? And let's say I wanted to give you a hug, right? So when I give you a hug, your brain releases a bunch of chemicals, but two main ones are serotonin and oxytocin. Oxytocin especially is a chemical that makes you feel loved and cared for and supported. And that is released the most when we have warm human touch from another person. And as we go away from warm human in-person touch to more digital communication, like a text message or an email, our brains release less serotonin and oxytocin, and in some cases, almost none. And so, for instance, me giving you a digital hug, right, via text message, your brain doesn't experience that nearly the same as me giving you a hug in person. And
Mhm.
so humans are designed to have these in-person interactions because there's millions of years of evolution that have designed us to be this way. And there is no screen in nature. There is no technology in nature. And so it's not surprising that, this thing that we've invented, and again, it's just to be clear, I love technology and think it's good.
Mhm.
I'm not anti-technology. I'm pro-humanity, but it's not surprising that this thing that didn't exist 100 years ago is probably interacting with us in ways that we couldn't have accounted for because it doesn't exist in nature.
Mhm. Well, and technology, it's been touted as making our lives easier, right? You can do things more efficiently. You can order your groceries online. You can do, all these different things, but when it comes to work, and like you said, that statistic with being in front of screens for, 12 hours a day, I could totally see that. I mean, I work on a laptop all day for the work that I have to do. What can we be doing differently with technology that will allow us to still be productive with work, but maybe not so tied to technology throughout the day?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, the enemy of productivity is distractions, any kind of distraction. And here's why. So, let's pretend you're at work and you're just having this amazing day, Candy. You're just crushing it. Like everything's going well, like everything is just falling into place. That's a psychological state called flow. And
Mhm.
what these researchers have done is they measured productivity when you're in flow. And what they found is that when you're in flow, you are 500% more productive when you're not than when you're not in flow. And so what that also means is that if you're in flow for just 2 hours a day, you can literally accomplish more in those 2 hours than you can in an entire day without it. But here's
Mhm.
the problem. When you're in flow and you get interrupted by anything, it takes you on average 26 minutes to get back into flow. Well, the average person checks their email and Slack once every 6 minutes while they're working, and they get a smartphone notification once every 15 minutes. And so if you're doing the math, you're saying, well, we're never in flow because we're always being interrupted. And that's absolutely right. The average person is never, ever doing as high quality or as productive work as they could because they're constantly either interrupting themselves by checking their
Mhm.
email or being interrupted by other things. And so a lot of the things that I do with companies and individuals to help them is to eliminate distractions so that they can get into flow and really do their best work.
Mhm. Yeah, I recently had a guest on my podcast that was talking about the same kind of topic and about how, if you can just turn off your phone completely, he puts it on airplane mode too. So nothing
Yes.
dings and pings and anything, and he can focus. And he was like, his whole concept is, get an hour's worth of work done in 30 minutes then instead of, 90 minutes because of all the distractions that happen. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
true. I mean, like I said, with everything that we have with remote teams, if we have teams that we're working with, and the way that people are communicating is through, an instant message or having to send an email or something like that too, it does seem like we all are using technology all the time to stay in touch because we're not in the same room anymore too. So I think that's another thing we have to try to manage is how can we stay connected and being able to communicate with those we work with, yet not have these constant distractions.
Yeah, well, that Kenny, what you just said is exactly why I'm so motivated to solve this problem. I literally think that this is the most difficult problem that humanity is facing. And
Mhm.
it's even more difficult than eating well. And because a lot of, like, for instance, I own 3 health clubs and I helped thousands of people with their health and fitness. And it's difficult to get people to eat well because you have to eat to survive, obviously, but
Mhm.
then you also have to still balance that with, eating stuff you like. Well, the
Mhm.
reason that technology is even worse is you're actually using technology even more than you're eating. You're, and again, on
Mhm.
average, using it about 12 hours a day. We're not eating 12 hours a day. And so how do you find this balance of using something literally almost the entire day without being addicted to it? It's very hard. It's very,
Mhm.
very hard. And I guess one of the things that I help people or organizations with is to create structured technology use that doesn't rely on willpower. Because
Mhm.
anytime you have to rely on willpower, there's a very good likelihood that you're not going to be successful with whatever it is. And that's just human nature. It's not anything against you or me. And so
Mhm.
I help people structure their technology use in a way that almost doesn't allow them to be distracted, or it's very hard to be distracted. And that is a total game changer.
Mhm. So, in terms of our businesses too, I mean, we're hearing use social media because you can promote your business and it doesn't cost, unless you want to boost or, pay for ads or things, but you could get the message out there, or when we are personally so far apart from family now, that's a way you can stay connected, or you can stay in touch with friends that you've had, there's all these things that are talked about, the positives. And you had mentioned in your bio too, you were addicted to Facebook.
Mhm.
What would you say, is your opinion on social media, and how can we still use it effectively, if we need to, without becoming too, having to be attached to that phone again all the time, checking notifications or things like that?
Yeah, so I find it helpful not just for social media, but to look at not only different parts of technology, but technology as a whole as a tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like a hammer can be used to build a house that, shields you from the elements and keeps you alive, it can also be used to smash someone's car. So
Right.
it's not the hammer itself that's bad, it's how you use it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I believe that technology that social media, for instance, is or can be a very helpful tool if you're a business owner or if you're a coach or whatever. But the point is that if you use it for the purpose, which is generally to like grow your business or grow your audience, that is one way to use the tool. But it's a different way to use it if you're just scrolling mindlessly or comparing
Mm-hmm.
yourself to other people, or you're spending 5 hours a day on it or something. Like then it's probably interfering with other parts of your life. And so
Right.
I think what I guess I suggest to people is just to have them ask themselves, what purpose does social media serve for you in your life? Like what actually
Mm-hmm.
what function does it serve? And if maybe if you don't have a direct answer to that question, or it's a difficult answer that you don't want to hear, maybe it's time to reconsider your relationship with it.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with what you're saying on that too, because I have heard too, and you were talking before about having some of the mental illnesses or challenges or, depression or things that are going along with social media usage, and people who are comparing themselves to images that they're seeing, which often are, just the best of someone's life, right? They're not showing
Yeah.
you all the things they're going through that are the struggles. They're just showing the top of the mountain type things, right? That then you have
Hmm.
this comparison issue. So I guess it's important again to talk to the listener about, don't define yourself against someone else, maybe when you're seeing things on social media, because often what you're seeing isn't real.
Yeah, so I actually have a very interesting point related to that I could share. So, in researching humans first, one of the things that I also researched was eating disorders and why, the history of eating disorders. And in America, they actually started to proliferate around the 1960s. And you might
Mm,
ask yourself, well, what happened then, right? So what happened in the 1960s was that was the first time that TV became available in most homes.
mm,
And so what happened, let's pretend, for instance, you were a woman living in a town of 200 people. And so, roughly there's 100 other women that you're comparing yourself to, and maybe 20 of them are your age, right? So your
mm-hmm,
sphere before TV was you comparing yourself to these 20 women who are your age in your town. Well, now when TV comes along, you see all these beautiful actresses and actors and people in show business. And now you're not comparing yourself to those 20 females your age. You're comparing yourself to all the people on the screens. And
mm-hmm,
because you obviously don't stack up compared to the most beautiful people on the planet, you feel worse about yourself. And that leads you to have an eating disorder. And so
mm-hmm.
that happened with TV, but that is happening like exponentially more with social media. And that's proven. There's no debate about this. It's not a question anymore. And so I think it's super dangerous for kids to be on there for hours a day because
Right.
they're subconsciously comparing themselves to people, and it's not giving them a positive self-image.
Mm-hmm. So if we are, hearing this conversation and we're saying, okay, like I know I am spending too much time, or, I'm comparing myself, or, I have all these things, yet I still need to be able to use it. How do we set those boundaries so that we're using it appropriately, but not getting sucked into this vortex of, just scrolling, or like you said, comparing? Like, what can we be doing?
Yeah, so I have three different suggestions for people depending on how serious they are about wanting to get their time back. And by the way, so the average person in America spends 2 hours and 14 minutes a day on social media. It's literally a part-time job. And so
Mm,
my challenge to people is, what if you even just cut that time in half? Let's just say you spent an hour a day on social media. You'd have an extra hour a day or about a full workday every week just to do whatever you want, right? And your
mm-hmm,
life could be used in such a better way. But here are the three suggestions I have for people. The first one is to turn off all notifications related to social media. and you can just do that in your settings. You go to settings, notifications, you just turn off all the each app's notifications, and that way you're not sucked into it nearly as much. The second suggestion I have is to take all your social media apps and then move them to the very, very last page of apps on your phone. So
Mhm.
that way they're not immediately there when you open your phone. It does take more scrolling and it's slightly less convenient on purpose because, you're trying not to use them. In my
Mhm.
opinion, though, the gold standard and what I've done for myself is, and again, like I know that this might not be a very popular opinion, but I've actually completely deleted all social media from my phone. But if I really want to access it, I just use it as much as I want, as often as I want, as long as I want from my computer or laptop. So that
Mhm.
way I have to be super intentional about using it. And I'm on a desktop computer. It's not nearly as convenient. And I can still do everything on there as I can on my phone, or just about everything, but it's just not going to be as likely to suck me in.
Mhm. That's a great idea too, because again, sometimes it's first thing in the morning, someone wakes up, grabs their phone and is already doing, something before they've started, their day. And I think, like you said, if you have to go to your computer and log on and then go to the website, you may not do that as often. And,
Right.
again, I think there's pros and cons to everything, right? Everything in the world, it could be a benefit, but it could also, be a detriment depending on how it's used. So not have it rule us, but we rule it, right?
Right. And what's interesting is, let's say, what if I told you that every day a random person on earth would determine your schedule for 2 hours of your day? Like they would tell you everything that you did and saw and read. You'd probably be like, why on earth would I want that? Like it
Mhm.
seems ridiculous. Yet that, believe it or not, that's exactly what's happening when you're watching social media or using it. Because Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, who owns Facebook and Instagram, he's determining what you're looking at, not you, right?
Mhm.
Like you've indicated a few things about what you want to see, but his algorithm and what he wants, that he's really controlling your entire schedule for the 2 hours and 14 minutes a day that the average person is using social media. So like, I don't want to be controlled by someone else like that. I want to dictate what I want to do with my
Right.
life. And so
Mhm.
I just choose, not to spend that much time on it, or hardly any time really.
Mhm. Which is why a lot of us aren't really seeing a lot of engagement even on our own social media that we're using for business too, because it's being controlled by, like I said, this algorithm, and they want to make sure that certain things appear and obviously incentivize you to actually pay for ads or boosting posts or things too, right? So that they're getting some revenue, because if you're just doing it on their free version, they're not getting the revenue. So I think, a lot of times what we're doing and spending our time on the social media too, we're not necessarily seeing the results that we are hoping to see. And so we have to look at the return on investment on that too.
Yeah, and what I don't think a lot of people think about is, what's the return on your time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if it's taking you 5 hours a week to create content, and you do that for 10 weeks, that's 50 hours, right? That's more than a full work week. And if you got no clients from that whatsoever, you know, that's a pretty bad return on your time. And
Mm-hmm.
it might not have cost you any money, right, to post those things on social media, but your time is valuable. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is, should be factored into the equation as well. I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Well, that's a great point too, because what you could be doing with that time and how much could you have earned, with the time that you have instead of spending it on that too. So again, it's just really looking at what works in our business and, not necessarily having that one magic pill that we can use, which social media has been promoted a lot as that's what you should be doing because of the cost, right? It's not going to cost as much as other alternatives. But so if as an employer, we have employees obviously that have to use technology too, and we want to find things that are going to help them do their job well. It's so hard to even stay updated on all the things that are coming out, and things change so often. But is there a tip maybe that you could give to us as business owners of maybe how we can find things that would be useful, but not end up being like a time drain on the employees because we want them to be productive?
Yeah, are you saying, just in general, in like, if I'm an owner of a business, and
Mhm.
what can I do for my employees?
Like, what can I do to find technology that really is going to assist them to do their job, but also
Mm,
not be something that on the other side maybe ends up taking a lot more time than we think? Or, how do we analyze the
yeah.
technology that's out there or that's coming out consistently?
Yeah, I like your question, Candy. So, I actually just was reading a bunch of studies about this, about technology overload it's called, and how humans react to using different types of software, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what these authors found is that software is just like anything else in life, where you want it to be just right. If it's too complicated and there's too many features, it actually is very overwhelming to use, and people just short circuit. And there, it's when it's overwhelming, people don't want to use it. On the other
Mm-hmm.
hand, if it's too simple and it doesn't accomplish what I need it to accomplish, it also doesn't really help me that much, right? Because it's not doing what I need it to do. So it is kind of this situation where I would recommend to companies that if you're going to buy software for a specific purpose, that you really take the time and vet out and that you're getting the software that you need, and then it's not too much for what you're trying to do, and it's not too little. It accomplishes just the right amount of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, what I actually find when I work with companies is nearly all the time, they have too much software. They have too
Mm-hmm.
many software packages doing too many things with too many ways to communicate. And I know it seems very counterintuitive, but nearly always what I find is that by taking away some software or simplifying everything, it actually makes everything easier and makes it way less stressful. And I know,
Mm-hmm.
again, that's very counterintuitive, but I really think that is very common for almost every company I talk to.
Mm-hmm. So I know we're going to be coming close to the end of the episode, but is there any information that you want to share that maybe I didn't ask the question, but is something that you think would be helpful for the listeners?
Excuse me. Yeah. One of the things that I also do is I help companies transition to a 4-day work week. And I know that a lot of people think, oh, like but by the way, when I say 4-day work week, I mean 4 8-hour days, not 4
Mm-hmm.
10-hour days. And everyone still gets the same pay. So
Mm-hmm.
you truly get 1 day of time back. And I guess what a lot of people, if they're entrepreneurs, they're worried, well, I can't do that, or I wouldn't be able to do that. But I consider the father of the 4-day work week, Andrew Barnes, and he took a 240 person financial services company, and he basically had no game plan, and he transitioned them to a 4-day work week. And at the end of his pilot period, he had these statisticians from a couple local universities measure a bunch of stuff about his business. And what he found is that profit per employee increased 14.5% when they were, even after they were working one less day per week. It's incredible. And so I really believe that the 4-day work week is possible and very helpful for not every single business, but most of the businesses out there. And I think that more companies should be considering doing that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another topic just on its own that we could have a conversation, surrounding how that could even be implemented, especially if you have a business that needs to have staffing. How do we, handle all of the staffing to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the customer as well? So maybe we could think about having you back to talk about that in the future. But I would love to ask if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners, and how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, Candy, I would love to connect with people via my website. My website is humansfirst.us. You can find out more about my work there and what I do for individuals, teams, and companies. And I'd actually love to offer your listeners a free 30-minute technology mindfulness consultation call with me via Zoom. All you need to do to redeem that is just email me. My email address is rob, at humansfirst.us. Just mention this podcast in the subject line, and then I'm happy to set up a free 30-minute call with you.
Perfect. Well, I do appreciate your taking your time to be with me today, Rob, and sharing your experience on this topic. Like I said, I knew it was going to be interesting. It's one that I haven't really discussed before. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Candy. Really appreciate the opportunity.
And I want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in as well. I hope you found this topic interesting and that answered some of your questions about technology, mindfulness, and he did mention a quick little snippet of a 4-day work week. So if you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Rob at any of the links that he shared, or send us a message at media@abandp.com. And would you please remember to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. Remember, you can also find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share our show information with those you know, and leave a review on your favorite platform? I would really appreciate your support. All right, until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.